Broadcasting live from somewhere in the Shadow Realm, this is YuGiOh Duel Links Talk. Here's your host, Doug Dimmaduel.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of YuGiOh Duel Links Talk. Today, we're going to go over a deck that I've been playing around with a lot. This one's been pretty fun, especially since the Yami Bakura event just came out. There's just a lot of Fiend decks being put together, and a lot of them that are just a blast to play with. So this is one that I've been messing around with. It's been pretty successful against certain decks. Now, I don't have all of the pieces that I personally need, which is why by the end of the Yami Bakura event, I'm probably going to end up spending some of my EX jewels, depending on what I do and don't have on my last day of farming of Yami Bakura. So anyway, this one's a pretty standard one. This is the kind of deck that I've seen floating around, but I've added my own little adjustments to it, and you'll see once we get to the spell and trap cards. But the first one, of course, I have my two copies of Dark Necro Fear, the level 8 Fiend, 2200 attack, 2800 defense. This was the one that people were really excited about with this reemergence of the Yami Bakura event, now having a second copy of Dark Necro Fear. This card cannot be normal summoned or set, but must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 3 Fiend-type monsters from your graveyard. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was destroyed by an opponent's card this turn by battle or card effect and sent to your graveyard while it was a monster card under your control, target one face-up monster your opponent controls, equip this card to that target, and while this card is equipped to a monster by this effect, take control of that monster. So Dark Necro Fear is a really good card. What I'll tend to do is when I have that one out on the field and I'm up against just a really strong monster, say like a Blue Eyes White Dragon or even some of those fusion monsters that are pretty powerful, I'll just run into that monster with my Dark Necro Fear, find the strongest monster on the field, just run into it. I'll take the hit with my life points, and then what I'll end up doing is at the end of that turn, taking control of that strongest monster that my opponent controlled. Now it's under my control, and it could just really switch the game around into your favor. Dark Necro Fear is an awesome card, and the fact that you're able to special summon it also can help you kind of load the field because you're not using a normal summon in the or in that next turn. So it's still pretty solid all around. This is one of the better cards out there currently, and this is just one of really the big backbones of having a Fiend type deck. The next one is just another major player here. We have Archfiend Empress. This is another one of those rewards that you're able to get in the Yami Bakura event. I think if you hit 3 million event points. This is a Fiend, level 8, 2900 attack, 2100 defense. If exactly one face-up Dark Fiend-type monster on the field, except this card would be destroyed, you can remove and play one Dark Fiend-type monster from your graveyard instead. When this card is destroyed and sent from the field to the graveyard, you can select one level 6 or higher Dark Fiend-type monster in your graveyard, except Archfiend Empress, and special summon it. So what at least this would do is if you get this one out after the fact that maybe you end up losing your Dark Necro Fear and it's sitting there in the graveyard, Archfiend Empress, then if it gets destroyed, you can end up floating that Dark Necro Fear back out onto the field, and you can really just totally revamp it. So yeah, absolutely. And with the 2900 attack and 2100 defense, Archfiend Empress is a really solid level 8 monster. It's got a really strong attack, so absolutely formidable. Right now, I only have 2 copies of it. This is one of the ones that I'm holding off for until the end of the Yami Bakura event. After I find out if I don't get a third one, I will be using my EX jewels on getting a third Archfiend Empress. Now, whether or not I'll stick to using 2 or 3 in my deck, that's up for debate, but I'd rather have a full play set of it regardless. Next one I have here is Trance Archfiend, level 4 Fiend, 1500 attack, 500 defense. Once per turn, you can discard one Fiend-type monster, and if you do, this card gains 500 attack until the end of this turn. When this card you control is destroyed and sent to your graveyard, you can target one of your banished dark monsters and add that target to your hand. So this is just another really good card overall as far as filling your graveyard with Fiend monsters for the eventual summon of Dark Necro Fear. But also this is just one that I have 2 copies of as well. So if I can get a third one from the drops, then that's great. But if not, I will also be using my EX jewels on that one. Just in here, just as a filler right now, I have Emissary of the Afterlife. It is another level 4 Fiend. It has a 1600 attack and 600 defense, so not a bad attack. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, each player adds one level 3 or lower normal monster from their deck to their hand. Now, in this deck that I run right now, I don't necessarily have that, but you could set up in a way where you could, and you could potentially benefit from that effect. I don't, and this is just a filler for me right now. Usually it's just kind of discard fodder if I do have my Trance Archfiend, because it is a Dark Fiend monster as well. So, I don't know, it could be worse. Then this one is just an absolute staple in this deck, this next card, and this one you can easily obtain at the card trader. It's Doomdog Octhros, and it's a level 3 Fiend, 800 attack, 800 defense. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, add one level 8 Fiend type monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Doomdog Octhros once per turn. So this one's just fantastic. I'll even try and tribute summon this card if, say my opponent is also playing pretty defensive, and they're not trying to attack my face-down monsters. I'll just use Doomdog Octhros as a tribute summon for, say, something like an Archfiend Empress, and thus sending it to the graveyard, activating its effect, and I could search out, say, a Dark Necrofear or something along those lines, and get that one onto the field as well, eventually. So, yeah, this one has a lot of big play potential. This is just an absolute driver. You want to see this card in your hand as soon as possible. Just all around worth it. And if you could get 3 copies of it from the card trader, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Next one here is Possessed Dark Soul. It's a level 3 Fiend, 1200 attack, 800 defense, and I like this one a lot because you contribute this face-up card and take control of all face-up level 3 or lower monsters your opponent currently controls. So I may or may not run one more copy of this one, maybe just run 2 copies and get rid of my Emissary of the Afterlife. The reason being is because I've noticed a lot right now, given all the additional support that's been out there, Mako's Tsunami decks have been really, really popular. So between the legendary Ocean card and the fact that they use Hammer Shark to downgrade its own level down to level 3 and summon a level 3 or lower monster, if your Mako's Tsunami opponent fills up their side of the field with all these level 3 or lower monsters, all you gotta do is send out your Possessed Dark Soul, activate its effect, and you're controlling all of your opponent's monsters in no time, since usually they're sitting at level 3 or lower. So, you know, it could be a little salty on my end just putting this in for those types of decks, but I also see a lot of people running level 3 monsters in those Harpy Lady decks when I see that they use the Sonic Duck and quite a few of the other level 3 monsters, even Jerry Beans Man I've seen being used a lot. I think because in the meta there seems to be a constant fear of that 4-star Ladybug. So it seems like more people are playing powerful, high attack level 3 monsters. So for right now, because it seems like people are relying on them so much, Possessed Dark Soul is a great card, and it fits well in this deck because it's another Dark Fiend monster that, even if you're not in a situation where you're going to use its effect, hopefully you can find its way into the graveyard and eventually use that as fodder for your Dark Necrofear. So this one, it's kind of a win-win if you have this card in your deck. Then, just for the heck of it, because I have a copy, it's the Gross Ghost of Fled Dreams, level 4 Fiend, just a plain vanilla, 1300 attack, 1800 defense. It's got a high defense, so I don't mind having that out there. And then I also just run a copy of Headless Knight, level 4 Fiend, 1450 attack, 1700 defense, plain vanilla. If I get another copy of the Gross Ghost of Fled Dreams, I will replace my Headless Knight with that one, just because I like the higher defense stat. So just having some plain vanilla Fiends in there that are more formidable, definitely like having those in this deck. Now, let's get into, I guess, the part that can get a little bit more unique and you can put your own spin on things with these Fiend decks, and that's the spell and trap cards. There's one that seems to be a pretty standard trap, and that's Fiend Griefing, and that's the trap card that you could get in the event as well. You target one monster in your opponent's graveyard and shuffle it into the deck. Then you can send one Fiend-type monster from your deck to the graveyard. So I like this card a lot just because you're able to just start dropping more Fiends into your graveyard. Just overall a really good card for this type of deck. There is another standard card that it seems like everybody likes to run, and that's Windstorm of Itaqua, and that's you change the battle positions of all face-up monsters your opponent controls. That's the one that you could get with My Valentine. You could use just level her up, and you'll unlock this card. It's a rare, so yeah. But anyway, what I like to do in this deck, though, is run Stray Lambs. Now, this one is a super rare that you can get out of the Age of Discovery booster box, and you special summon 2 Lamb tokens. Beast type, Earth, level 1, attack 0, defense 0, in defense position. You cannot summon other monsters the turn you activate this card, but you can set. So, what I could do is, if I get this card out pretty early on, at least what I'd like to do is maybe put Stray Lambs out on the field first, and if I have an Archfiend Empress, I'll distribute the two Stray Lamb tokens and set my Archfiend Empress, because it does have a 2100 defense, so kind of hoping that that my opponent doesn't have an overly powerful monster on their first turn to overpower my Archfiend Empress's defense. So that's one option. The other option too is just fill the field with those Stray Lambs, and then maybe even set a Doomdog Octhros or one of your other monsters, even like you're the Gross Ghost of Fled Dreams, something along those lines. But just fill your field. And what this does is it at least will allow you to buy a turn or two, because you have a field full of defense position monsters. I know it's 0 attack, 0 defense. You do put yourself at risk, especially against monsters who inflict piercing battle damage. But if you're able to avoid that type of thing, having Stray Lambs on the field will buy you some time and hopefully get you all the pieces that you need moving forward. And then other ones that I like to use too, because I have such low defense monsters like Stray Lambs, is I like to just run 2 copies of Enchanted Javelin. If I'm setting defense position monsters, or even if I'm starting my turn just laying down a Doomdog Octhros on the field, if I have an Enchanted Javelin during my opponent's turn, they're not going to inflict any life point damage to me. So what I'll do is I'll boost my life points by that monster's attack, and then also activate Doomdog Octhros's effect, and get exactly what I need to do and start getting my combos going. But I like having that additional life points involved. It's pretty good. Now, as far as skills that will go along with this Fiend deck, it just depends on your preference. I mean, I'll notice some people use Draw Sense Dark just to make sure that they get a monster in one of their next turns. Personally, I always like using Restart, just in case there's just a hand that I absolutely don't like to start off with. Balance can also be a good one too, but at the end of the day, it's really just down to your playstyle preference. Right now, with the current deck that I run, I am using Draw Sense Dark, although I think I'm leaning towards doing Restart for this deck. But overall, I mean, this is just the basic layout. There are improvements that I'm going to make, and I think I'll revisit this subject once I get all the pieces that I get. But I will probably end up doing some playtest videos on this Fiend deck, probably on the YouTube channel. If you haven't been out there, we recently put out a video about a Dark Flare Dragon build that we did. There was the Mokuba Dark Flare Dragon podcast episode, so you get to see a lot of what we were talking about there, but also seeing it in action against a few different opponents, so you're able to see at least different strategies to use. I want to do the same thing for this deck. If you think that's a good idea, just reach out to me on Twitter at YuGiOh Deck Talk. It's all one word, at YuGiOh Deck Talk, and I'd love to hear your feedback. But also, if there is anything that you want to add, or if there's anything that you've done as far as a Fiend type deck build, I know there's some better ones out there, ones that are really effective. I'd love to see them, and I'd love to revisit this subject. So if you do have something that you want to add, definitely just reach out to me on that Twitter account, and we'll definitely try to bring it up in a future episode. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.